$70,000 was too risky for my dream. But $725,000. That was perfectly reasonable for my sister's failing luxury event company. Let that sink in for a second. I'm Nina, and the night I realized my parents would rather watch me drown than throw me a life raft while simultaneously building my sister a yacht, something fundamental shifted in me. Not anger. Not even surprise, really. Just this cold, crystallizing clarity that some people spend their whole lives avoiding. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Because to understand why I eventually stood in my doorway and said no while my parents begged me to sell my home to save theirs, you need to understand what it's like growing up as the spare child. The one who exists in the margins of someone else's spotlight. From the outside, our brick house in Austin looked perfect. The kind of place you'd see in a home magazine, with the manicured lawn and the cheerful wreath on the door. Inside though, everything, and I mean everything, revolved around one person. Gemma. My younger sister. The golden child. I was the quiet one. The disciplined one. I brought home good grades like it was a job requirement, not an achievement. Gemma. She was the star. The one who deserved stages and applause and endless, bottomless investment. When I was 16, I asked for a used car. Nothing fancy. Just something so I wouldn't have to take the bus in 100-degree Texas heat. My parents said no. Told me it was unnecessary. That I was responsible enough to manage without it. I believed them. Actually believed them. Then Gemma turned 16. I still remember that night. Fairy lights everywhere. Half the neighborhood showed up. And there it was, rolling down our driveway with a giant red bow on top. A brand new car. Not used. New. Everyone clapped. I clapped too. Smiled like it didn't feel like someone was squeezing my chest. I remember standing there thinking maybe I'd misunderstood. Maybe I hadn't asked the right way. Maybe if I'd been clearer, more convincing. That's what you do when you're the overlooked kid. You blame yourself for not being worth the effort. A year later, I needed $500 for a summer coding program at the university. $500. I researched everything. Printed out the curriculum. Explained how it would help my future. My mom frowned and said, "There's no need to waste money. You can learn online." I actually tried to argue. Told her this was different, that it was hands-on learning with real mentors. She just patted my shoulder and said we needed to be practical. 2 weeks later, Gemma got flown to New York for a $12,000 acting camp. Complete with new luggage, designer outfits for headshots, and a celebratory dinner before she left. Everyone called her talented, gifted. Special. No one asked what I dreamed of. But it wasn't just the money. Money was just the symptom. It was the way attention shifted in a room. The way love seemed to have a favorite direction, and that direction was never toward me. I won first place in a statewide science competition once. I walked through the front door shaking with pride, holding my certificate like it was made of gold. The living room was packed with relatives. I thought maybe, just maybe, this would be my moment. They were all gushing over Gemma's ballet photos. My mom glanced at my certificate. "That's nice, honey." Then she turned right back to bragging about Gemma's costume. By evening, my award was buried under a stack of magazines on the coffee table. I found it weeks later, crumpled and coffee-stained. I smoothed it out and hung it in my room. Nobody noticed. So I learned. I learned to cook my own dinners. Handle my own homework, figure things out alone. I learned not to expect anyone to clap for me because they were too busy giving Gemma a standing ovation for existing. There were small moments that hurt worse than the big ones. Like when I made the dean's list 3 semesters in a row and my dad said, "Good, that's what we expect." Meanwhile, Gemma got a standing ovation at dinner for landing a non-speaking role in a community theater production. Or the time I stayed up for 48 hours straight finishing a major project that won a departmental award, and when I came home exhausted and proud, my mom was on the phone bragging to her sister about Gemma's new headshots. When I earned a partial scholarship to a prestigious university across the country, my parents reminded me about the high cost of living and wished me luck. When Gemma enrolled in an expensive arts program, they threw her a farewell party. The whole family came. I packed my bags alone in my room while downstairs they toasted to Gemma's bright future. The night before I left, I sat at dinner listening to my aunt ask Gemma about her plans, her dreams, her aspirations. Nobody asked me anything. I was just the responsible one who'd figure it out. Still, some stupid, hopeful part of me thought adulthood would change things. That once I proved myself, once I built something real and solid, they'd finally see me. Turns out, some patterns don't fade with time. Some wounds don't heal just because you get older. And I was about to learn that lesson in the most brutal way possible. After graduation, I threw myself into the tech world. Long nights. Relentless deadlines. No safety net. But for the first time in my life, my effort actually meant something. After 2 years of grinding, I had $40,000 saved. Money I scraped together from overtime shifts, careful budgeting, and saying no to everything that wasn't essential. I lived in a studio apartment with a Murphy bed and a hot plate. I wore the same 5 outfits on rotation. I made my coffee at home and brought lunch in Tupperware containers. Every dollar mattered because every dollar was a step closer to something that belonged to me. Then I saw it. This glaring gap in the construction industry. Project management software that actually worked the way contractors needed it to work. I built a prototype in my cramped apartment, testing it on weekends, refining every feature. Reached out to companies. 8 of them said they'd commit once the product was built. This wasn't a fantasy. It was real. Viable. I had spreadsheets. Testimonials. Letters of intent. I just needed $70,000 to make it happen. So I did something I almost never did. I hoped. I actually let myself hope my parents would choose me this time. I flew home for the weekend with printed business plans, revenue projections, and a polished demo. I rehearsed my pitch in the mirror. Imagined them looking at me with pride for once. When I stood in their living room, laptop open, heart pounding, I genuinely believed this moment could rewrite our entire history. I laid it all out. Showed them the prototype. Explained the market gap. Walked them through the financials. 8 companies ready to sign. Conservative projections showing profitability within 18 months. I even had contingency plans printed out. I talked for 20 minutes. Answered every question I thought they might have before they could ask. Made it as risk-free as possible. My father lowered his newspaper when I finished. Didn't even look impressed. "It's too risky," he said. Flat. Final. My mother nodded. "You already have a stable job. Don't gamble your life." They didn't ask questions. Didn't look at the numbers. Didn't even try. I remember my hands shaking as I closed my laptop. I remember thinking, just once, couldn't they believe in me the way they believed in Gemma without question? I closed my laptop slowly, swallowing hurt that felt almost predictable at this point. I told myself to breathe. Reminded myself that disappointment wasn't new. This was just another entry in a very long list. I flew back to San Jose that same night. Couldn't stand to be in that house another minute. But what happened 3 months later wasn't disappointment. It was betrayal. I was in my tiny apartment debugging code past midnight when my mom called. She sounded breathless. Excited. "Gemma's starting a luxury event company in Dallas," she said. "We're helping her launch." Helping her. That phrase hung in the air like a threat. Then I heard the number. $725,000. Not a typo. Not a mistake. $725,000. Alone. A brand new BMW for her brand image. An office space in the trendiest district. Designer outfits for networking. Lavish launch parties to attract high-end clients. All the things that were too risky for me were suddenly worth massive investment for her. I couldn't speak. My mom kept talking, telling me about the grand opening, the influencers Gemma had lined up, the magazine spread they were hoping for. Her voice was so full of pride it made my stomach turn. "We're so excited," she said. "This is really going to be something special." When I finally found words, all I could manage was, "That's great, Mom." She didn't hear the flatness in my tone. Or maybe she did and just didn't care. After I hung up, I sat there staring at my reflection in my dark laptop screen. And I realized something. They didn't think I was too risky. They thought I didn't need them. That I'd figure it out on my own like I always did. But Gemma needed saving. And that made her worth everything. I stared at my wall for a long time after that call. My chest felt tight. My vision went blurry. I wasn't naive. I knew Gemma had always been favored. But this wasn't favoritism anymore. This was a decision that told me, without any doubt, exactly where I stood in my own family. And in that quiet apartment, lit only by the glow of my computer screen, something shifted inside me. Not anger. Not yet. Just this sharp, cold clarity. If I wanted a future, I'd have to build it alone. Because I finally understood something painfully simple. I could spend the rest of my life proving myself, and they would still choose her. Every single time. Once I accepted I was on my own, I made the hardest decision of my life. I mortgaged my small San Jose condo. Combined that loan with my $40,000 in savings. It was terrifying, signing papers that tied my entire future to this fragile idea and an empty bank account. The loan officer asked if I had family who could co-sign. I almost laughed, but fear felt cleaner than disappointment. At least fear belonged to me. I rented a tiny office in this aging industrial building on the outskirts of the city. The paint was peeling. The ceiling leaked when it rained. The heater made these awful clanking sounds like it was barely surviving. But to me, it was the beginning of something real. I hired Felix, a fresh graduate with sharp instincts, and Claire, who handled clients with this perfect mix of warmth and grit. The three of us sat around a dented thrift store table, mapping out features, drawing wireframes, cold-calling potential customers. We called it CoreFlow. Project management software built by people who actually understood construction. Then reality hit. Hard. The first few months nearly crushed us. We worked 18-hour days. Ate cheap sandwiches and canned beans. I coded until my wrists ached and my eyes burned. Some days the app broke in ways I couldn't explain. Some days potential clients ghosted us after showing genuine interest. Felix almost quit twice. Claire maxed out her credit card, keeping us afloat. I stopped calling my parents because I couldn't bear to hear about Gemma's success while we were barely surviving. My mom would send me photos from Gemma's Instagram. The fancy office. The networking events. The BMW parked in front of upscale venues. Every photo felt like a reminder of what I wasn't worth. Then came the worst blow. A mid-sized construction company that had promised to sign a major contract backed out at the last minute. Their email was cold and transactional, but the impact was devastating. That contract was supposed to be our lifeline. Without it, our entire budget evaporated. We had 3 weeks of operating costs left. 3 weeks. I sat in the dark office long after Felix and Claire went home, staring at the nearly empty spreadsheet. Rain tapped against the cracked window with this slow, steady rhythm that made everything feel heavier. For a moment, I wondered if my parents had been right. Was it really too risky? Was I foolish to think anyone would believe in me? But then I remembered my father folding his newspaper. The flat tone of his voice. The certainty with which he dismissed me while saving every ounce of faith for Gemma. And something inside me hardened. I refused to fail in a way that would prove them right. I spent the next week reaching out to every contact I had. Revised our pitch. Offered trial periods. Anything to get our foot in the door. I called 43 companies in 5 days. Got rejected by 41 of them. Just when I thought we were at the brink, an email appeared. A construction company in Sacramento wanted to try our software for a year. It wasn't huge, but it was real. Steady. Legitimate revenue. When we signed that contract, all 3 of us sat on the office floor eating dollar pizza, laughing and crying at the same time. CoreFlow was alive. While we were slowly regaining our footing, news from Austin started trickling in. Gemma's luxury event company was collapsing. Turns out, expensive offices and fancy cars don't create business acumen. Her expenses ballooned. Her client list evaporated. The events she planned were beautiful but unprofitable. She was hemorrhaging money. The BMW she'd flaunted on Instagram got repossessed. The trendy office was abandoned. The designer outfits ended up on resale sites. Turns out, throwing money at someone who's never had to fight for anything doesn't magically create business sense. My parents were drowning in debt. The loan payments were crushing them. And for the first time in my life, they started looking in my direction. The first call came on a Thursday evening, right after I finished a meeting about a new CoreFlow update. My phone buzzed again and again until I finally picked up. My mother's voice trembled the second she spoke. Nina, we need your help. The bank is threatening to take the house. If you could send $100,000, we can fix part of the debt. $100,000. The amount I'd scraped together through sleepless nights and sacrifice. The amount that represented every inch of my independence. Before I could respond, my father took the phone. You're successful now. You have money. We raised you. We invested in you. It's time you repay the family. Invested in me. The words were almost funny. Then came the words that sliced through me. Sell your home if you need to. Sell my home. As if the condo I'd fought for, the one I'd mortgaged to survive, was nothing more than a convenient asset to bail them out. I swallowed hard. Dad, I can't. This condo is all I have. It's the foundation that kept my company alive. Silence. Then a heavy sigh. So you're choosing yourself over your family. Something inside me snapped. Not in anger, but in clarity. I'm choosing fairness, I said quietly. Something I never got. My mother started crying. My father muttered something about ingratitude. I hung up before their guilt could crush me. For the next week, the calls were non-stop. Messages stacked up. Gemma texted me paragraphs dripping with entitlement. You're the only one who can fix this. You owe us. Stop being selfish. One message said, would help you if the situation was reversed. I almost texted back, no, you wouldn't. Because you've never had to. I blocked her number after the fifth message. But nothing prepared me for what happened next. The day they showed up at my door. It was a warm autumn afternoon in San Jose when the doorbell rang. Repeatedly. Urgently. I expected a delivery. Maybe a neighbor. Instead, when I opened the door, my parents stood there with Gemma by their side. My father looked stern. My mother looked tired. Gemma stood with her arms crossed, wearing this expression like she was the victim in all of this. We need to talk, my father said, brushing past me before I even invited him in. They settled on my couch, visibly uncomfortable in my small condo. A place that didn't match Gemma's former luxury aesthetic. I stood across from them. A wall of calm distance separating us. My mother began gently, like she was trying to soften me up. Nina, what happened with Gemma's company? No one could have predicted it. The market changed. She just needs time. We all do. I said nothing. My father leaned forward. You have the ability to help. All we're asking is that you sell this place. Use the money to save the family. Gemma finally spoke, her tone thick with accusation. I didn't mean for things to fall apart, but you're doing well. Why can't you do something for us for once? That word. Once. It nearly made me laugh. I drew a steady breath. For once. All my life, you've been given everything. Ballet classes, camps, cars, a $725,000 loan. And when I asked for $70,000 after years of working, planning, building, you said it was too risky. Do you hear yourselves? Gemma rolled her eyes. That was different. I stared at her. How? Explain the difference. She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. My father cut in before she could try. We believed in her dream. And I didn't have one. My voice stayed even, but it vibrated in the air. When I asked for $70,000, I had a working prototype. Clients willing to sign contracts. A plan. Everything you preach about responsibility, I lived it. But you looked me in the face and said it's too risky. My mother's eyes filled with tears. We didn't want you to struggle. I held her gaze. I struggled anyway. You just weren't there to see it. The room went silent. The air felt thick enough to cut. I continued, my words slow and deliberate. When Gemma wanted a BMW to look successful, you borrowed an impossible amount without question. When her company failed, you shielded her from consequences. When the debt grew, you blamed bad luck. But when I built something real, when I fought for every inch of this life, you barely acknowledged it. My father shifted, uncomfortable. We trusted you to take care of yourself. I nodded once. That's exactly the difference. You trusted me to survive alone. You trusted her to be saved at every turn. Gemma huffed, defensive. You're being dramatic. This is family. Families help each other. I looked at her with a sadness I hadn't expected. Families also recognize effort. They acknowledge sacrifice. They don't demand their children destroy the very things they built. My father's voice sharpened. So that's it. You'll let us lose everything. His words hit hard, but not in the way he intended. For a moment, I saw them. Really saw them. Scared. Afraid of losing their home, their pride, the image they'd spent years maintaining through Gemma. But then I remembered myself. The nights I coded until dawn. The meals I skipped. The condo I fought to keep. The loans I took on alone. And the voice that answered was steady and unbroken. I'm sorry you're struggling, I said. But I am not selling my home. My mother sobbed. Gemma scoffed. My father shook his head. They waited for me to crumble. To apologize. To explain. Instead, I gave them the only answer I owed. No. It came out quiet, but it carried the weight of every year I spent being overlooked. Every apology I swallowed. Every dream dismissed. Gemma surged to her feet. You're heartless. I didn't flinch. No. I'm finally done being your backup plan. My father's face hardened. You'll regret this. I walked to the front door, opened it, and stepped aside. I already spent a lifetime regretting things that weren't mine to carry. Slowly, stiffly, they stood. They walked past me, each step echoing the end of something I tried so long to fix. My mother paused in the doorway, her eyes pleading for a version of me that no longer existed. I didn't speak. Didn't apologize. I simply closed the door. It clicked shut. Soft. Certain. Final. Then I leaned against it, letting the silence settle around me. Tears gathered. Fell. Then stopped. Not because I wasn't hurting, but because I had finally chosen myself. And for the first time in my life, choosing myself didn't feel selfish. It felt right. In the 6 months that followed, everything settled into this strange, quiet distance. I didn't block my parents, but the calls stopped. The texts stopped. Even the guilt stopped. All that remained were occasional updates from acquaintances in Austin. Updates I listened to without reacting. The brick house I grew up in was eventually mortgaged, then listed for sale. My father pulled from his retirement early. My mother spent more time at church than at home. Gemma moved in with her boyfriend, posting carefully curated photos that tried and failed to hide the fallout. I heard through a cousin that they downsized to a small rental. That my father took a part-time job at 68. That Gemma was working retail. Part of me felt sad for them. But a bigger part of me felt free. Meanwhile, core flow surged forward. We signed multiple long-term contracts. Doubled our team. Moved into a brighter office in a busier part of town. Felix became our CTO. Claire our COO. We hired a full development team. We hit profitability in month 19. 2 months ahead of my original projections. I left my small condo for a quiet rental house in Palo Alto with a tiny garden where I could breathe, think, and simply exist without walking on emotional eggshells. Some nights I sat outside with coffee, listening to the distant hum of the neighborhood. The pain didn't disappear, but it softened. And in its place grew something steadier. Something I'd fought years to earn. The certainty that choosing myself was not abandonment. It was survival. In the end, saying no didn't break my family. It simply revealed what was already cracked. I walked away from the guilt, the expectations, the years of being the dependable one who never deserved investment. And by choosing myself, I built a life defined not by approval, but by peace. Thanks for listening, and if you liked this story, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to comment and subscribe for more stories about family, boundaries, and finding the courage to choose yourself. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop setting yourself on fire to keep others warm.